Hello and welcome to episode 25 of the Making It podcast. 25 episodes in. Would you believe it? Yes, you would. Quarter of a century. And we are back. We're a little bit tight for time. I do apologise. This is a bit my fault. Because last night, me and Dan were meant to record the podcast. I laid down for 1 second on my side. The next thing you know, it's 8 in the morning. So there you go, fully clothed, and I'm already asleep. But anyway, we are here for episode 25. And we're going to be talking a lot about, well, I'm not actually going to spoil what we're going to be talking about because we had a little chat in the pre-chat about how our weeks have been and stuff, and we kind of noticed an underlying theme. So before we get into that, Dan, first of all, how you doing? It's good to have you back again. Good to speak to you. How's
Yeah,
things?
it's good to chat to you again, brother. I'm all good. For context for the listeners, it's currently 8:45 in the morning for me. I think it's 5:45 in the evening for Jay. We are
God.
recording on the day of the upload, so you're getting it fresh. But no, I'm all good, brother. But something I've been thinking about this week is relationships and friendships and how they fluctuate so much in so many different capacities. One moment you're friends with someone, the next you're not, and then you're closer to someone else. And for me, especially friendships where it's people you've grown up with, you've
Yeah,
been
yeah.
to school with them, naturally you've lived a life with them, and then when you become adults, you kind of lose a bit of connection. You realize maybe you don't get along as you thought you did because you're now becoming your own identity. You're not just those kids in school anymore. And I'm struggling to understand that some of those relationships do fade, but I almost I didn't just randomly think of this, but like over time, I kind of thought, it's a bit like a plant. Some plants just die sometimes, and you've just got to let them die. But then you can water others and let them grow and let them thrive. And I think that's where I've kind of understood, like maybe it's about shifting that energy rather than sometimes I spend a lot of time thinking, okay, could I try revive this friendship? Could I try, why is this fading away? But sometimes it just happens. Like you grow up and you have different morals. And like I say, you're not those kids in school anymore just having fun. You're actually becoming, your own people. So let those others grow, put more energy into the other ones. So what do you think about that? It goes into all kind of dimensions, doesn't it? The workplace, friendships, anywhere really. And it must be interesting for you right now being in Australia to reflect on your relationships.
This is a massive time for me to reflect on my relationships, because there's people who I've known a long time that don't text me. And by the way, someone not texting me and not wishing me well hasn't changed what I've done today. I've not done a lot today, but I've had a good day, for the most part for this, second part of the day. I've had a good week. I've had a good start. But, your friends, you would hope would wish you safety. You would hope would wish you well because that's what I do when they go somewhere. I wish them safety. I wish them well. But some haven't. So you evaluate relationships in different ways. A message doesn't always mean that they're your friend. So you don't have to look at it like, hey, this person didn't say happy birthday, so I hate them. I'm going to give you a metaphor now, Dan, because it's my favorite thing to do. But some plants like the sun and some plants love the shade, and that's fine. I.e., some of your friends like to be in your life all the time, out there in the sunshine where you can see them nice and bright. Some friends like to just be in the shade. Every now and then you ring them up, you text them, and they're there for you. But that's it. They're your friends still, you know? And often we do give friends labels and we give them, it's almost like a leaderboard in our lives when really you can just appreciate the fact that on a baseline level, everyone that that you associate with and that makes you feel good and that you can just rely on, whether it's sporadically or all the time, they are your friends. They're good people. And all of my friends at the moment are virtual, which is hard, which is tough, because I would like to spend time with my friends in person, especially at the moment when things are feeling a little bit more lonely than normal, because I'm 3 weeks in and it's like, okay, I'm almost at the point I was at the last time I was here, and I'm like, I'm ready to go home now. So to break through that barrier is tough, but relationships are so important because they can also drive you down different paths, you know? And whatever you want in your life, you should see in your friends. I would say that I'm in no capacity to tell you that I've been successful because of my friends, but I can say I felt a lot more happy. I feel like I've got a good support system, and I feel like I have got people whether it be all the time or every now and then, that I can just call and rely on when I need help or when I need to talk or just talk about rubbish, mate. You, Declan, other people in my life, I could just call you up and be like, you're never going to believe what I've just seen. I've just seen a pigeon drop a worm on a dog and it just go mental. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm never going to ring you and tell you that, but you get what I'm trying to say.
One
But
day you
friends
might,
are.
man.
I might do.
I find it interesting as well because even a relationship itself can fluctuate. You know,
Yeah.
you can kind of grow closer to someone and then maybe get a little bit more distant over time, and then you go closer again. And you know, I've had friends where I've ended up not speaking to them for a while. All of a sudden, you know, you realize, you know, this person is actually a good person in my life, and you rebuild that bridge, and you actually become closer after that. So even the actual relationship itself fluctuates. I think the main thing for me is understanding the thought process of when these relationships change and almost learning to accept them for what they are. You know, if a relationship of mine, like a friendship, fades away, understanding that, yes, it's still upsetting. Yes, it's still sad. Yes, I could have hoped that that wouldn't happen. You know, I've kind of grown up hoping I'd be friends with everyone forever. But life just don't work that way. You know, you can't, it's not feasible. And I think for me, it's just accepting that emotion of being a bit upset about a friendship almost fading in a way. But Jamie, how important have relationships been for you in your making it journey? It reminds me a bit of the foot in the door episode, because relationships kind of build your foot in the door. So, you know, how important have relationships been for you in your journey?
Well, we've clashed on perceptions of relationships a lot. And I wouldn't say clashed as in, I mean, there's been times where it has been a bit heated. Usually a beer's been involved in that. Um, but, you know, in terms of like clashing, I know that you do want to be peaceful with everyone and you maybe do want to be everyone's friend a little bit. I'm not like that. There's certain people who I just don't like. And I think I've made that abundantly clear. And, you know, we don't agree on maybe that approach, which is fair enough. But relationships in my making it journey have been massive because you don't know who the people you meet, how much they'll change your life. You know, I came to Australia. We met my mum's friend. Through my mum's friend, we met Mikey. Mikey is the football coach for my mum's friend's kids. And Mikey immediately, without knowing me, said, come and sit on the dugout, in the dugout with me. And I'm like, gee, you know, why would you do that? And we get talking and he's like, oh, you know, I do coaching at home and blah, blah, blah. And through that, I've now managed to get myself a couple of days a week doing coaching at Gold Coast United. Through that one person has introduced me to multiple different avenues. And I don't want to jinx anything, but I would like to think that there'll be more days to come out of this, you know? He's offered me a job doing gardening out here, which is mad because that's like what I did back home.
Tell them how much an hour it is.
I can't, I don't go into that. You can't, it's not something you discuss.
Fair enough.
You don't discuss all your before the deal is done. The deal is not done yet, so I can't reveal any figures. But the thing is, it's relative to here, right? So it's different. But there's a lot of land to look after and some banana trees to pull out. So I've got my work cut out. I've just got to get my snake-proof trousers, which is kind of crazy. So just kind of waiting to get into that. But that all came through one person. So, you know, you shouldn't see everyone as like a seed for a big tree of things that are going to happen in your life. But in a way, they kind of are.
Sometimes it just happens, doesn't it? Sometimes that seed just grows.
It does just grow. And you don't know because through Mikey, while I've been away, he's mentioned me to the academy director. He's mentioned me to the technical director, you know, and all these people I've got to know, the general manager of the club. And I've got to know all these guys, you know, and I've got to talk to them. And also shout out to Matt because every session I'm asking him, how many steps should I take between cones, Matt? And he's like, these are the stupidest questions ever, but these are little things that I really want to know. And that's all through one relationship. So if that's an example I can give, is that not every relationship is going to be like that. But every now and again, you just have to recognize when that one special person's come into your life and go, wow, I've got to appreciate that person. You should appreciate everyone you meet for different reasons, for teaching you lessons or for allowing you to experience life in it from a different perspective, or both. But I appreciate Mikey, and that is the example I'll give you. How about you? What is there an example of something that's changed your life? Maybe was there a relationship that led you to go to Newcastle in particular, or was that your own decision? Relationship to get into coaching?
Yeah. My granddad being up in Newcastle drew me to Newcastle a lot, and then I went to the city for an open day, and that's when I connected to the city. You almost have a relationship with things as well. You know, I've got a relationship with Newcastle. I got a relationship with Nottingham. Um, so my granddad brought me to Newcastle. So that sparked a lot of things with coaching. That was kind of, I just searched up online like internship. So that didn't quite come through someone. But throughout coaching, I built many relationships. You know, the team I was coaching, you know, I got close to a lot of them, got to know a lot of them just through, you know, a sport. Football is amazing. You know, I went from, you know, just meeting Stephen, my mentor for the coaching over the season, just by the head of football going, look, here's who's going to be helping you over the season. At the end of the season, I'm going for a pint and a pie with him, discussing blooming finances and football and everything. So it's amazing how relationships can grow. And, you know, it's amazing to think of what a relationship you never thought like how it was going to turn out. Like we can reiterate it, bro. Like think of us right now doing this podcast. Like when I first joined the pub, bro, who would have ever thought this would have been the case? But like it's amazing, and I'm grateful for our friendship, brother, and I'll always state that no matter what. But like you say, it's important to appreciate people, and you know, how do we appreciate people? How do we show people how important their relationship is to us? You know, I think about me and you. Sometimes we might get a bit emotional, or one of us is having a couple of pints and we'll message each other like, "Oh, I love you, man. Like, thank you for everything," and stuff like this. And
Dan
you
does
know,
that without the beers, by the way. So we both do.
but you got to tell people who you really appreciate that you appreciate them. You know, we talk about giving people their kudos. You know, give your friends their kudos just for being your friends. They don't have to do anything in particular, but the fact you hold them close to your heart, let them know, because people want to know that sort of stuff. And you know, another thing is spending time with people. You know, making a conscious effort to ask how they are, even if it's just one message in a day and it's a 30-second conversation. You know what they've been up to that day in one message. You know, so it's important to these people who you care about to give them time, and to like I say, you know, in your garden, you know, you've got your plants that are dying, but those ones that you really want to keep and hold close to you and thrive, you know, water them more, spend more time with them, message them more, call them more. You know, no one will ever think it's disrespectful, or unless you call them up at blooming 3 a.m. the night before they got a really important job interview, but just to call them up at a random time just to see how they're getting on, because people need that more than you know. You know, sometimes people are going about their day and they just want someone to ask how they're getting on, you know? So I think it's really important, like you say, to appreciate relationships. But relationships are amazing. And I think it's amazing it's almost like you can live a life through someone else at a time. You know, you're out in Australia right now, and I'm so excited about what you're doing, and I'm not even doing it. You know, it's amazing to see you thrive. And you know, I think about my girlfriend Scarlett, and it's just like the person she was when I first met her to who she is now. Like it's amazing. And like I say, you got to give them that kudos. And you know, relationships are special, and you know, relationships are everything. People are everything. You know, and it's going to be interesting to see the relationships you build in Australia, brother.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes it's tough to envisage if you will build relationships. It's always a thing that I worry about. It's like, will I build any friends out here? Like, you know, at the moment where I am, it's quite quiet. It's super nice, but it's quiet. You know, Byron Bay, which is like half an hour down the road, he's busy. It's full of young people. It's kind of like where I want to be. So a couple of days a week, I'm trying to make a conscious effort to get down there. But like, that's where it's at. I'll go out and I'll come back with 3 jumpers, a couple of pairs of shoes, and I'm like, what the fuck? I was just sitting and talking to the people working there, and as I'm doing that, I'm like, oh, I'll have that then. I'll have that. It's working from their side because they're just getting business done. But like, you know, it's interesting to kind of think about. I have no idea who I'm going to meet tomorrow. I met a woman at the beach earlier. Interesting story. I took the dog for a walk. Now, I think I was walking the dog in the no dog zone because everyone with a dog turned around, and I'm like, get a load of these guys. I'm going to keep walking. Get a load of this guy. I just kept walking. And I was like, you know what? This is quite cool. So I was just running around with the dog, and I saw this woman. So there was basically, to add context, there was a cyclone here. 3 months ago, and because of that, the boundary of the beach has been pushed back loads.
What's a cyclone?
A cyclone's like a typhoon, like heavy winds, floods. Well, the boundary of the beach has been pushed back, so it goes from sea to beach to like just a massive, where the land has just completely stopped, and sometimes like sand will fall from it and shit will just fall. Well, there was one woman searching around all the old trees and stuff that had fallen down, and she was picking out these rocks. And I was like, "What the hell is she doing? She's mental." The dog's gone over to her. I'm like, "Oh, for fuck's sake. God, so why has this dog just gone over to this mental woman? Like, just picking up random stuff." Well, I had a look, and there was this rock called pumice. And I'm like, "What is that?" So I went up to her, I was like, What are you picking up? So, "Oh, it's pumice." I was like, "What purpose does it serve?" And she's like, "Oh, when you go for a shower and you're warm, rub your feet with it. And it's a natural exfoliator." And I'm like, "Really?" So I searched this up and I'm like, I don't know if I believe it, to be honest. People are paying like $40 for a bag of this stuff.
Put 'em in
I'm
there.
like, "There's loads of it." So I could take a couple of pieces with me. And I got speaking to her anyway, and she's like, "Oh, I've got a tattoo." I was like, "Oh, nice." So I looked at the tattoo and whatever, and she asked where I was from. I'm like, "This order of events is really weird, but this is interesting, so I'll just carry on with it." I said, "Oh, I'm from Nottingham in the UK." And she's like, "Oh, funnily enough, that's the place where I got this tattoo done." And I'm like, "What?" As if we are like 12,000 miles away, and there's a random woman on a beach picking through for pumice rocks, and she's got a tattoo from Nottingham. You'd assume 20 minutes, 30 minutes from where I live. That is how small this world is. And so when we say like relationships are spontaneous and a little bit crazy and random, it's like, but we are only people. You know what I mean? Like, and there's something, I can't quite describe what it is, Dan, but there's something that brings you to the people you need to meet. And no one's going to know what it is unless we go into simulation theory. But we aren't a conspiracy theory podcast. But there is something, Dan, that is driving us to the people we need to meet in life, whether it's for good reasons, bad reasons, and only we can determine whether they come out and determine us to be good or bad.
But that's the thing, and it's funny because we can only really determine that in hindsight once it's all happened. Right
Yeah.
now you could be friends with someone who actually is deteriorated in things in your life, and not until a year later when they do something really messed up, it's like, damn, that person was doing that to me. And God bless all those people who are in toxic relationships and they're struggling to get out of them. And
Oh, yeah.
we get attached to people, and obviously you can go into the whole psychological side of that, of like parenting and why that happens. But it's I pray that everyone, in terms of love, in terms of friendships, in terms of family, has good relationships with people, but sometimes we don't. Now, how do we deal with relationships which are a bit sour? I'm probably quite fortunate enough to not have too many, especially in my family. But in terms of friendships, there are some that do turn sour, and sometimes you question what would happen if I, saw them outside. How would we interact and stuff? But sometimes that interaction doesn't need to happen. But that's the other, almost like the dark side of relationships. How do you deal with sour relationships? I don't really know if I can comment on that too much. If you want to talk about that at all, then go for it, brother. But how do we deal with relationships which are a bit toxic, are a bit sour?
Well, first of all, don't let them consume you. And remember, you have power over the situation, as do they. There's an equal power share when it comes to sour relationships because you have the power to not do anything about it. The other person has the power to not do anything about it. You also have the power to address them and to speak to them and to solve your problem. So does the other person. You both have that power. So it depends on the person, it depends on the scenario. There are people in this life, Dan, I cannot forgive. They can apologize, things won't change. Those people know who they are, and I'm fine with that. But there are people in the world that you should not forgive and give your time to. And I know that's tough because you want to be good with people and you want to be like, hey, I want to be friends with everyone. I want everyone to be like, cool. The world will spin no matter what. Like, everyone being cool isn't good. That's not good. There has to be people that don't like each other. And that sounds like a crazy thing, but not everyone in this world has a good ethos and a good view of life. And in other ways, it's kind of like we are all a bit selfish in the fact that we sometimes just don't like people who don't think like us. But that's because we're humans and we have those mentalities. So for sour relations, everyone has a different view. There's some relations that I will go to the ends of the earth to salvage. The relationship with my dad, the end of last year, was just nothing. I didn't have one. Like, me and my dad just did not talk. We completely fell out. I don't want to go into the depth of it, but it was horrible. It was one of the worst experiences of my life. And then I decided, when I was on holiday, I was like, right, I'm going to say to my dad, be here at this time, and we'll see if we can talk it out. Didn't have to turn up. That's where his power in this situation is. I made my power in asking him to turn up somewhere. Didn't say sorry, I've got nothing to apologise for. He turned up, he apologised, I forgave. Obviously it was Father's Day on Sunday. My relationship with my dad hasn't been perfect, and it still isn't now. But I'm grateful for it because there's kids all over the world that would love to have had a dad, even in some capacity. And my saying is, it's not perfect, but I've got it. And I have to be grateful for that. We fell out. We've had multiple fallouts. I've been let down lots of times. Things have gone the way I wouldn't want it to go. But those sorts of relationships, I would advise you salvage. Those people that do really matter, that maybe have hurt you a little bit, but you know you'll love them unconditionally. Family. But as for friends that don't really add anything to my life, or people that don't really add anything to my life, they're just a passer. They're just a tumbleweed. That's how they are. You know what I mean? Go slow in front of you when they're your friend, blah, 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 and then they're gone again. That's just how they are. So, but I know you think about relationships with people a lot, and you want to keep them. You want to keep them good. My worry is that sometimes those people aren't good for you. But only you can determine that. I'm just your friend. So it's whether you think they're good for you or not, you know?
Yeah, of course. I just want to say thank you for sharing that, man, because you didn't have to, share anything, but thank you for sharing that. No, I do agree, and it's a constant thing which I'm in the process of learning, and I think that probably sparked, the theme of this podcast really, and what I've been thinking about this week. And maybe I do give people too much time. Maybe I'm too forgiving. Maybe I give people too much of a chance. But maybe that's just me. Maybe it's just something I do. I guess it's not a bad thing that I give people a chance, but then also you could class it as wasting time. I thought of Judy when we were talking there, because that was a crazy relationship. And, sometimes she says to me, it's like, Dan, do you ever think it's a bit weird that, like, we're actually like friends? And I'm like, no, it makes sense. Like, we enjoy spending time around each other, but the fact that that came from just me and Leo knocking on her door and, asking about doing a bit of gardening. And now I could go around to Judy's for a cup of tea and talk about what we're talking about right now. It's a crazy world. So shout out Judy. I also want to shout out Adam Price as well. He listens to the podcast every week, and that's a relationship for me which I cherish. And me and Adam both know we could see each other more often than not. And maybe sometimes with friends, we have these people who we all have those friends, right? Or those people in our life where you could not see them for 5 years, and the next time you see them, it's like you saw them yesterday. Maybe I know for a fact with Adam, and Adam won't mind me saying it because we talk about it, and with other friends, maybe I've took relationships like that for granted at times. Those friends where it's never going to really change because you're that close. It's like you could see them at any moment, and like I say, nothing really dramatically changes because you're that tight. But those, like I say, those people are the sort of people I want to spend more time with and let those plants grow more. Why not be closer to those people and find out more about those people? Just because I'm close to them and I don't have to see them all the time to have a strong relationship, why not spend more time and make that relationship stronger? I think relationships are an amazing thing to reflect on, because there's so many different dimensions to them. And there's so many people who we have attachments to, and we question sometimes what they do, and we maybe tolerate some things that they do. And like you say, it's good to be forgiven and give that unconditional love to the people who, like family or people who you do want in your life, because maybe they're just on a little bit of a tangent right now. And I think maybe with what you're saying, and we'll probably have conversations about this for the rest of our time, brother, about people who maybe I gave too much of a chance to, maybe you could have given more of a chance to, or we're probably gonna have conversations like that forever. But I think one thing is, just kind of base it off how you feel about someone. Something I've always kind of done maybe is tolerate people too much, and the line of being someone who I associate with gets thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner until one thing happens and it's like that line just snaps and that line ain't there no more, and it's like now it's just a respect thing. And in hindsight you can go, why did I let that line get thinner and thinner? But maybe with relationships which you've had for a while, deserve that time to fade rather than cutting off straight away. And I think another thing as well is with people who maybe things have turned a bit sour, or maybe you've decided, okay, I don't want to spend too much time around this person anymore. With relationships, you don't necessarily have to put pressure on yourself to cut people off, because you're inevitably probably going to see them another time one day. You might bump into them in an aisle in Tesco. You might bump into them in the pub when you're out boozing. You might bump into any random place, but you can limit your time with them. You can choose not to spend time with someone that's done you wrong, or you feel like you don't want to associate with anymore. And that's another interesting one. And something I've always spent a lot of time with is that idea of, oh, will I bump into someone? But there's that beauty of you can ignore people in life, and that's something I know I struggle with, because I don't want to ignore people, but sometimes people don't deserve your time, and that's another one. But it's an interesting topic, relationships, and it's amazing that we can talk about it for such a long time, brother. And relationships can take you in amazing places, and they can take you down loopholes. Reflect on your relationships.
And also, it's amazing that we can talk about relationships from the point of view of two people that have actually got good ones to cherish. But there's a lot of people in this world that are lost and don't have what we have. So I'm grateful for it. Or perhaps they do have it, but like you say, sometimes take it for granted. I think that I've taken people for granted before, because I think we're that close, it's never going to really change. It can change. Anything can happen, But there's some people who I think take me for granted. It's my honest opinion. And I think those people deep down will know who they take for granted in their life. But like I said at the start, since I've been here, the people that have messaged me and have been kind and have reached out and asked how I am, and I appreciate them. The people that haven't, it kind of hasn't shocked me so much, But you mentioned in that the dialogue there that word tolerance, which is so important, because every friendship has a tolerance level. Now, a bit lighthearted, but me and Declan were in Berlin, and I really didn't want to go and watch this gaming tournament. I really didn't want to go and watch it. But Declan loves esports. And I was like, how long is this going to be on for? Oh, it's a good few hours. And we sat there for like 5 hours. I was like, watching people gaming. I'm like, this is the worst thing ever. I kind of got to enjoy it anyway. And, it was a freezing night. I remember it. Freezing. And we got back late. We went to Pizza Hut. All because I tolerated this, by the way. Could have gone and done my own thing. We're both adults. And we went to Pizza Hut and we met this really nice person. I went out drinking with them and I had a really nice night with them. Deck went back because he wasn't bothered. He doesn't drink. But if I didn't have tolerance that night and I was a bit mardy, I was like, I'm not watching that. I imagine the night I would have had would have been rubbish. So, being a little bit tolerant with the fact that your friends like stuff, and even if you don't want to do it, you should do it because they're your mate. Have that tolerance is so important. So on like a kind of, for those people that you are in a relationship with in some form, have that tolerance, because it can lead you down some mint paths, new things you're discovering, just stuff like that. I find it really, really intriguing. But it'd be interesting to hear how other people view relationships, especially you in the comments. How do you view the people around you? Do you think sometimes that you do give people a bit too much leeway? Do you give them a little bit too much room to kind of mess you about a little bit? Because I think we all do it. I don't think that if you are in that position, that it's anything new. But is it something that you'd like to change? And Dan, is there anything that you kind of like to say more about relationships?
I think we've touched on a lot there.
Did you just say that?
Whoever that was agrees, but
right. Well, that's my mum's friend's kid, and he knows I'm on a podcast, so he's done that on purpose.
But no,
anyway.
I think we've touched on everything I really wanted to talk about relationships there, and I just want to say, Jamie's muted his mic, so there must be some random ass noises going on like that. But everything you said, man, it makes me understand why I'm friends with you, man, and I'm grateful for our relationship. If we're going to talk about relationships, and the things that you said there shows, how mature you are relationships, and I always take notes from that. But I think it's been a great episode on relationships. Jamie's going to try and talk here, but he'll have some random noises in the background. I also want to shout out Ollie and Azza and Harry. We played a bit of tennis, and their relationships that I enjoy. And me and Ollie and Aaron also went out to the Peak District and went on a nice walk. So things like that are nice, and I'll always cherish that.
So I really, really apologise, because I respect what you said, Brian. It means a lot. Yeah, defo. Those boys are the fucking. Pardon me. They are the goats, man. Shout out to Aaron as well, because Aaron comments on most of our stuff. So
he does actually. Aaron. Yeah, let's not take that for granted. Shout out Aaron.
So, and not just us, but Aaron actually supports a lot of his friends. And he gives a lot of kudos and shares a lot of stuff. So do you know what? Not even just for this, but just for the small messages and comments. Aaron, you're a top lad. Appreciate it. So be more like Aaron. Help us out a bit, because we are trying to reach more people. We are trying to kind of hear different perspectives. And obviously Dan's doing his Making It Moments. So go and listen to the most recent one, which is on Spotify now and YouTube as well.
Having good feedback on that as well. So go and check that out.
I enjoyed the episode. Had a little listen this morning. So it's really interesting to hear from her perspective of kind of life in university and her making it journey, someone that's very switched on. So if you also would like to hear that, YouTube, Spotify, Making It Podcast. If you want to email us, makingitpoddy@gmail.com, or jump on the TikTok, because shout out the TikTok people. Been a bit quiet, actually, TikTok people in the last week. So pick it up a little bit. And that's all I've kind of got to say on that. But we want to build relationships with our audience. So get in touch, speak to us, and we'll see you for episode 26. But we are a quarter of the way there to 100 episodes, Dan. We are 25 weeks into the year.
Come on, son. Come on.
Love this. Anyway, 34 minutes of podcasting. Gotta love it. See you next week. Take care. Stay around for Making It Moments and our social media. That was episode 25. See you next Tuesday. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Feel so fine.